2010 to 2013. And from there, that was in South Wales. So then I moved back to North Wales and did some kind of like private music tuition, of guitar and drums and bits and bobs like that. And then I jumped to, I wanted to be a music therapist at the time, or was kind of aspiring to, looking to do something like that in the future. So I I trained to be a primary school teacher because I kind of thought that was kind of like a nice step into kind of having some experience. At 21, I thought I was far too young to be a music therapist. And I needed some more life experience. So yeah, trained to be a primary teacher, 2014, 2015, probably the worst and best year of my life so far. It was, pretty crazy.
Was
I
it
realized that
was it what you expected? Or
no, it wasn't. I think not to discredit people I work with or anything like that, but I trained in England, even though I was living just inside the border of Wales, and it was only during that kind of teacher training I realised how different the education systems were in England and Wales, and not that I was committed to teaching in either country, but I realized that teaching in general was it's very much a lifestyle, and one that I didn't want to fully commit to because I knew I'd have to compromise in my, doing music and things like that.
Yeah.
But I do remember, this kind of like lady coming and talking about supply teaching, and I kind of like, she told this story about someone who was doing supply teaching while she wanted to tend to her horses and ride her horses. And I thought, oh, that's cool. If I just replace horses with music, I could probably get the hang of that. That'd be quite cool. So I did supply teaching for quite a while. But actually, while I was doing my teacher training, some friends and kind of other ex CSMers or people that graduated from Creative Sound and Music, Lee Davis and Miles Warren, they were working on a project called Feed at the time in South Wales.
Yeah.
Which was essentially an app at the time, as part of a larger organization called Incidental, and it was a sound remixing app, and they built, and they were designed as a performance tool initially, and then they saw the potential for that to be used in schools, so they designed some workshops around it and we're doing that in schools. And so while I was doing my teacher training, I actually did a what's it called, an after school club using the app, and kind of got kids to kind of like do that, and I wrote a little report about how that went and sent it down to them. And so I started doing some work for them remotely, doing some like found sound remixes and kind of bits of consultation about facilitation and stuff like that. Fast forward to 2017, I moved down to Newport to kind of work with them on a more regular basis, and ended up kind of being kind of the head of education now. I think Lee and Miles were doing kind of like a lot of top level stuff, project management, larger projects. And at that time, it was in 2017, 2018, the Wales was going through this kind of change with their kind of primary education, education in general, after the kind of like a report that was the Donaldson report, which was published based off a series of kind of sorry, I'll just have a quick look at this move.
Yeah, you've completely caught me out. I'm already behind. But just to clarify then, Feed was an app that was kind of used in educational situations to teach children about sound and kind of like in a graphic way, kind of like using an app, and that's now formed into a company called Pyka.
It's
Pyka.
we pronounce it Pyka, but but it's a word that had a lot of time spent kind of designing, so there was that level of intrigue around it. But yeah, essentially, Feed developed into Pyka. So the app was rebranded into was called Loop. So it's Pyka Loop, and then we've got other digital tools that Lee and Miles developed, and then we kind of use those tools to deliver creative education experience. Well, yeah, creative engagements in schools, and other cultural institutions, basically. So, but yeah, at the time, I guess I was doing kind of like with another colleague, Greg Ryan, who was also an ex-CSMer. Yeah, we were doing quite a lot of the schools facilitation at the time. So we spent best part of 2 years basically in schools, primary schools mainly. Kind of, yeah, it was about creative education basically. That was the kind of we were able to jump on the kind of the trends at the time in Welsh education that were leading towards a more kind of progressive, kind of open look at education, basically.
I mean, Wales has quite a unique place, isn't it, for education in terms of like experimenting, but kind of being open to ideas. Because I remember even growing up in Wales, like there was some things going on like that I felt like were quite left field. You know, like having a percussionist coming in, doing like percussion like jams with us, or like Reese has actually asked, how easy was it to gain access to schools as an outside agency? That's a question for you.
Difficult. In fact, when Feed was just still Feed, and even when we were still Pyka at the beginning of Pyka, our workshops were sold as part of a package through another company called Upbeat. So they were doing a lot of kind of music education in schools at the time. So they offered things like drum workshops and other kind of instrumental lessons and things like that. And we had a kind of, I'm not too familiar with the relationship that we had. So yeah, I'm sure. Well, Lee and Miles will know a lot more than me, but we had a kind of arrangement with them where they would kind of advertise our kind of stuff that we did on their website. And Dave, the kind of founder of that company, Upbeat, was able to kind of get us into schools to start with, and then eventually we kind of like went off on our own and ventured off on our own. The bulk of the schools work we did after that was part of this Lead Creative School scheme. So it's a Arts Council Wales initiative that was part of their kind of learning through the arts umbrella, I think it was called, Learning Through the Arts. And the Lead Creative School scheme was about getting artists into schools and artists sharing their kind of creative processes with teachers so that they could think a little bit more creatively about education. And I think they're still running now, but it was a really successful scheme. Many artists were able to go in and kind of earn money from sharing their practice with pupils and teachers. So we did a load of those projects basically, and no two were the same. So yeah, that really kept us all busy. But yeah, particularly me and Greg when we were teamed up.
I think you better move because they're saying you're going to auto resign.
Don't auto resign.
I mean, like obviously starting up a tech. Yeah, did you just take me? Yeah, you just took something of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With my night.
I did say before, I predicted this whole thing is going to be an absolute carnage for me. So I've already predicted that, so it's all good. I was just going to say, like, kind of, I know you weren't involved from the beginning, but you were involved from the transition from one thing to another. And I mean, there is an element of Pyka, which is a tech startup company, but
Yeah.
you know, you're firmly within like that education system, but it's a tech startup company, and I know there's a lot of buzz around tech startups for obvious reasons. Like, did you find like there was a lot of support out there because you were in that field, and like did that enable then the musical side, like the sounds, you know, aspect, to kind of like, you know, just because you were involved in tech, did you find it easier to get stuff funding?
There were definitely grants and things available to us that we could have applied for. Again, I wasn't particularly kind of involved with kind of filling out applications for funding, although, you know, it was all of our job to kind of try and find them and source them and discuss them. However, yeah, we had a kind of like quite a good relationship with the Arts Council, and I guess we were just kind of trying to be clever about thinking about what we could offer to people in Wales, and how that aligned with the kind of movements in education and the movements in the priorities of the Arts Council and things like that. In regards to tech, I think it was we've got quite an interesting philosophy regarding what's my next move regarding tech, because we were kind of like looking at all the stuff happening, you know, coming out of Silicon Valley, kind of startups, and not feeling too aligned with how many of those companies kind of worked and operated and things like that. So I remember we had this kind of catchphrase that was tech isn't going to save the world, good ideas and good people will.
Nice.
So we were very much about with the tools that we created, the digital tools and the hardware. It was all about using technology as a way of engaging with the world around you in some way. So because we were seeing a lot of, especially being in schools a lot, where we were seeing kind of misuse at best of some tech, you know, just like using iPads as a pacifier and as a punishment, and terrible. Both as a punishment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was kind of like quite difficult to kind of see. So our kind of philosophy was, well, how can we get people to use these tools that are widely accessible to people, and mainly iPads at the time, because apps were still a thing when Feed and Pyka Loop kind of were developed. They were still like a big thing, particularly in schools. How can we use those to kind of get people to explore the wider world around them in ways, and then that extended to our courses, which were about kind of the real world application of things that they were learning as well. We found that often technological solutions for things were very kind of abstract, and didn't really offer any kind of real world application to what you were doing on there, basically.
I like the fact that you were fighting against that pacifier sort of thing, which like technology has become so much. I mean, you know, like, so like just like trying to break that sort of one-way road and create some sort of something a little bit better to come back from. And Pyka is a great company. I'm going to type in the name just for everybody to go and have a look at.
Nice.
I wanted to get into a couple of other things as well. So you created, you said you're a founder of Third Nature Records, which is a cooperative label.
Yeah, so actually at the end of 2019, 3 of the 4 core Pyka members that were active in South Wales decided that we wanted to go and do an MA, basically. So 3 of us, me, Lee and Miles went off to do a Masters in Creative Music Practice at the University of Gloucestershire, which was like an 18-month kind of thing. So it was, started September 2019, and we literally just finished it a couple of months ago. So we had that MA to do all throughout the kind of the pandemic. And yeah, the Co-op label was, I guess, my final project. So I was kind of like reflecting on my own practice. I did a lot of experimenting with different tools and different kind of ideas throughout the MA, and that kind of consolidated in why am I not making music often anymore? What am I kind of, what are the barriers for me making music, and why am I not kind of enjoying my practice as much as I think I should be and think I can? And I've spent a lot of time over the past couple of years reading and reflecting on the use of social media. I went down a kind of rabbit hole of thinking about how internet platforms and social networking platforms in particular had impacted our kind of impacted our perceptions of time. And so that was like a big thing I was looking at the time. And then that evolved into looking at the emerging music making practices that had appeared because of the affordances of internet platforms, which I ended up coining this phrase, goofy phrase, platform determinism, which is about looking at, which is basically thinking about how platforms can influence and often define the kind of, what was it? I forgot my own. Platform determinism was about thinking about how platforms can kind of impact and inform the nature of the work that you share on there. So if you're a musician on Instagram, sharing a 3-minute track on there doesn't really work because the affordances of the platform don't allow for it. So I was really thinking about, what does it mean to be a musician and have an Instagram account? Thinking about very specific things like that. What do you share on Instagram? And then kind of noticing that all these different kind of practices started to emerge, and we have shorter attention span for shorter songs, different types of AV kind of works appearing, people doing talk throughs of how they make their tracks and things like that. And so I guess I personally got caught up in all of that and started to focus way too much on making my Instagram account appealing rather than focusing on my music. And I'm definitely not the only one that I know to have done that. And so I did some time off from social media. So and I guess the kind of world caught up with that. There was a documentary that came out. Was it last year? The network, the social network effect. What's it called?
Right, the actual documentary on Netflix.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called now. But there was a documentary about internet platforms and things about privacy and what it's doing to us and things like that. So so the label, so that kind of came about because I got really obsessed about thinking about infrastructures at play for musicians. So as a musician, basically what you want to spend most of your time doing is making music and releasing music, right? So you don't really have the time or the energy to kind of think too much about the platforms and the infrastructures in which your music gets released on. So I basically did a lot of that thinking, and I kind of wanted to design my own infrastructure and looked for alternative platforms that were actually kind of fair to artists and had artist interests at the core of their kind of the core of their idea. So I found things like Resonate, which is a cooperative streaming platform, which is really, really great. I came across Ampled, which is a cooperative as well, which is essentially like a Patreon, but for aimed at musicians, basically. But yeah, they're both cooperatively owned, and I actually had a meeting with the co-founder of Ampled, Austin Roby, and we had a chat about these ideas that I was having, and because he wrote an article about how to start a cooperative, which I found really interesting, and we had a chat about kind of my ideas, and he kind of suggested, well, I think what you want to do sounds like you wanted to start a label, basically, that's like a cooperative. And so I kind of researched what that would mean and how that would work, and I really like the idea of it being this kind of vehicle for me to kind of release my music on kind of like my own terms that I could kind of define and create. So it was about kind of reevaluating what success was as a musician, and kind of avoiding platforms that I didn't really agree with, the ones that didn't make me feel good about my music, basically. And then so that is now open for people to kind of like come and join, basically. If you want to be an artist on Third Nature and you have similar kind of feelings about the industry, said feelings you can find on our website. We have a kind of bit of a manifesto that talks through kind of what we stand for. And then basically we don't have owners and then the artists underneath the artists are the owners. So you don't necessarily get signed as an artist. You become a member of the cooperative, and then you kind of contribute in helping
and
running
then reinvest
the label
as well. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, so the kind of any profits that are made from sales or kind of gigs and things like that gets reinvested completely into new releases and new projects from artists. And we get to decide how that's spent, basically, because we're the owners of the label.
57 Fox has got a question on Twitch. He's asking, do you think that during the pandemic musicians have been sidelined?
Sidelined. I guess
in terms of like the way the funding's been distributed, or like I know there's been funding, but in terms of the way that like certain, I guess I'm trying to elaborate on this. Certain businesses have been allowed to continue. I guess like like your commercial superstores and all those sort of things, whereas artists have just been told to like stand down and wait. Do you feel like that? I mean, from a label's perspective, do you feel like the artists that you've worked with have had to kind of just lock themselves away and focus on making stuff and stop being like musicians in the true sense of the performance word, I guess?
So I think what it's done is what the pandemic did was highlight sidelining that was happening all the time anyway, because of the lack of the lack of gigging. Gigging in the UK is the main income for most artists, for most musicians. It's the number one income, and so when that got removed, the torch kind of got. Let's check what you're moving. We kind of highlighted all the other kind of incomes that were available to us as musicians, and I kind of picked up on the Broken Record campaign and Liz Pelly writing about streaming being unfair, and Matt Dryhurst talking about streaming and thinking about alternative ways for musicians to make money and things like this. So I guess it highlighted I felt there was a bit of a movement happening that it was more about highlighting things that were already there, because the main source of income for many musicians had just been taken away temporarily. Me and kind of my peers who were making music, we tried some things, mainly because we're doing our MA at the time, and so we kind of had to think creatively. So we tried some online stuff. We did some gigs on did some gigs in Second Life. I did a Zoom festival, which was about incorporating that platform determinism idea. So it was about getting how do you create an interactive and engaging performance on something like Zoom? Because what I noticed was initially a load of people just who were playing guitars and singing, trying to do that on Zoom, and obviously because of the affordances of the platform and the kind of environment you're in, for many people it doesn't quite work as well. So we tried some things out online, and did some music making, worked on some records and things like that. But yeah, I think musicians were sidelined. To be honest, I guess my answer to that is I think all the pandemic did was to kind of highlight some of the things that were happening anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a really good response. He did say after within social media, but I guess like it's more of a broader response to that. I noticed that we're running out of time. It's 3 minutes, and then we'll be on our 10 seconds. And I know that you've just completely ruined me. There's absolutely no way that I'm going to get back from this, which was what I predicted.
I can't even tell what's going on.
You've destroyed me. Like, that's what's going on. And anyone who's actually tuned in to watch a good game of chess, I'm really sorry about that. But I mean, I wanted to talk to you about NFTs, because there's been quite a lot of fuss in the thing, and you said you got quite a lot to say about it. So I guess could we just take the last however long it's going to take to finish this game to just talk a little bit about NFTs, blockchain, all that sort of thing, and how you feel it's going to help artists, if you think it's going to help artists.
Yeah, I was. I mean, I know NFTs now. I know that NFTs have been around for 5 years at least.
I mean, sorry. Let's just take a step back. Firstly, what an NFT is, then, like, just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like, sorry, because, because I know I've watched a video on it, but it'd be interesting to hear it from your perspective as an artist, and like what an NFT is, and then maybe go back into what you were just about to say there.
So an NFT is initialism for non-fungible token. But that doesn't really help because no one ever uses the phrase fungible token. So I get a fungible token is a currency that you can kind of trade. So pounds are fungible tokens because you can trade a pound for a pound and it'll be the same. You can split a pound up into 50p, 20p's, and you can trade with it basically. Same with cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin and Ethereum, you can have half a Bitcoin and so on. So you can trade them. A non-fungible token is a unique token. Basically, it's a one of a kind. In kind of like physical world analogies, things like a car or a plane ticket are analogous, because if you can't really trade. You could trade a car for a car, but they're not of equal value. They're kind of unique. If someone pinched your car, you can't go and get another one exactly the same. Same with a plane ticket. So a non-fungible token, and what they're doing for the arts here. Sorry, just double check what I'm doing here. So non-fungible tokens work on the blockchain. So transactions get recorded basically on the blockchain. So the kind of platforms and the protocols that have popped up and are quite trendy at the moment. If you imagine something like a Tumblr interface, where currently, like a blogging platform, you can kind of write some text, you can upload a photo or upload a video, upload a bit of music, and you post and you submit, and it's on your blog on Tumblr or whatever. A lot of these sites have similar kind of interfaces where you upload a piece of media. So as an artist, you upload a piece of media. You kind of put a price for it that you like to sell it as. And uniquely with NFTs, one of the interesting things about NFTs is that you can also incorporate a kind of a recurring sale price. So rather than it just being like a one-time sale, like you would for like a digital print on Etsy, once that's sold, that person who has that print can go and do what they want with it. Whereas with an NFT, you can kind of incorporate as part of the contract a kind of like a recurring fee. So if someone wanted to say, if you sell on the NFT that this piece of media, I would like 10-20% of the fee to come to me. And because that's all written into that contract on the blockchain, it's just really easily managed, basically.
There's an element of ownership that you can't
That's
really
it.
have, like
It's a secure. It's about authenticating and certifying digital ownership, basically, ownership of digital assets and digital media. So for the first time, we can really do that, because up until now it's been about abundance and there being stuff available everywhere for free. It's a bit of a confusing thing because we've only really seen so far people kind of selling kind of like trendy gifts and things like that on there. So
also, I mean, there's people with quite a following, isn't it? Like it's like Beeple, who's already had his like success, and then like other people, big bands like that have got international success and like have a massive fan base. But I mean, like for an artist who may be like looking at new ways to get their art, their work out there, looking at NFTs, it's like it's all well and good, but actually, like, is there a use case for it for less well-known artists, independent artists starting up, and I guess like that was the bit that I wanted to go into, is like it goes back into the technology of blockchain more than what NFTs are, but in terms of like smart contracts and ways that artists can be clever about how they deliver their work to their community and their fan base, and NFTs is kind of highlighting that on a large scale, and like the ability to sell a gift or like a picture for millions of pounds is like proving that it's real. But for a smaller artist, it's more about the technology of blockchain and how it can help. That's my opinion anyway. It's like, I'm gonna run out of time. Jesus, can't do that.
Yeah. At the minute, I think it's interesting. There's a bunch of people that are doing some really interesting things, designing protocols that allow people to buy and sell NFTs that utilize blockchain technologies. But there's this quote from a book called Here. I think it's Here Comes Everybody by Clay Shirky that I always get out whenever, or I think about whenever a new technology is kind of kicking off and hitting up in the mainstream. And it's that things don't get tools don't get socially interesting until they get technologically boring.
Right.
And I just think at the moment, while there are a handful of creators and people that are making things who are familiar with this technology and the way things work, until everyday people and let's face it, consumers are familiar with this technology. Everyday consumers are familiar with this. It's not going to be massively useful. I definitely recommend as an artist get kind of doing your research and learning about what it is, because in a few years' time it will be way more ubiquitous. It will be ubiquitous soon enough. And I think things like houses and cars will be sold as NFT. Things will be sold as NFTs in the future. Anything that kind of requires kind of a certificate of authenticity, has the potential to be sold as an NFT. So it's worth looking into, but you know, people are still hooked on Spotify. Spotify still has the network effect. People are still on TikTok. People are still hooked into platforms that where their data is not theirs, and it's being sold off to people. And
it's a horrible trap to be in, isn't it? Similar to this game. I felt
oh,
you won, by the way.
nice.
So theoretically, this is when the stream actually ends, but still it's quite nice talk. So I don't want to end it straight away because it's a bit rude.
That's all right.
Yeah, but no, I completely get that. The social media side of data ownership is absolutely it's like a maze, and I'd like to see there be a shift, and a shift in ownership back to the people whose data it is. And yeah, like you're saying, I mean, like technologies like this, blockchains and can help this, but I mean, in TikTok and in like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, we've already signed a contract with those companies when we sign up, saying like like that everything that we put on there is kind of like it's theirs to use, I guess, freely.
Yeah.
Do you think there would ever be a point where like actually there's those platforms remain, but there's a shift in terms of like how data is valued and how people's data is valued, and in terms of like the use of my data, I could actually be financially rewarded for the use of my data within these platforms? Or do you think that's just a bit too much to ask, and it's not going to happen? Like,
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that happening. You know, with the explosion of NFTs and other kind of blockchain protocols, I can imagine something happening fairly soon, where big companies that whose business models rely on selling our data off to other companies and advertisers, that business model will not be as popular.
yeah.
I hope that's the case anyway. Or there's a, I mean, yeah, Jaron Lanier, his book "Who Owns the Future" kind of prophesizes about a world where you get rewarded for the data that you kind of have, your data. People make money off your data, so why can't you make money off your data?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that would be, in some ways that would be great. However, one thing that I've kind of noticed with NFTs, even over in the past couple of weeks, and with something like that, is just that I guess it's something quite personal that I guess that I'm not too keen on seeing everything in life being so transactional. I can just see that being just getting a really, really complex, and that everything turns into a transaction then, because
but I mean, in terms of like the way that social media is set up, it is transactional by its nature. So I guess to completely shift away from a transactional culture, we'd have to shift away from these platforms and figure out another way of interacting. And I think, ironically, there was a period in internet history where that was actually already happening. And I don't think it's a matter of like having to create something new, but if you go back to the times when it was more like peer-to-peer stuff, or like like you're on the forums sharing information and knowledge, or and kind of like not around the central hub of like largely owned by one figure, sort of like, obviously there's shareholders involved, but like it more felt organic, and like you were actually out there interacting with other people on a like by like basis without any sort of exchange in terms of like, I've got to give you my details for you to like give me and then you like my thing and all this sort of thing. Yeah, there was upvoting and all that, but I feel like there was a moment in internet history that already existed. Now it's shifted away, so maybe
yeah, well, again, I'm hoping that will kind of return, because that was very much a Web 1.0 kind of
absolutely
scene, and then Web 2.0 was kind of consumer focused and user
absolutely.
focused. So yeah, with Web3 and the
Internet
kind of
of
stuff,
Things and all that.
that kind of stuff. Hopefully there'll be a resurgence where people just go and build their own website and they just have a page on there. And
yeah, man, can you imagine that, people actually having websites again? Well,
yeah,
I mean, we won't go into that because
well, no, I'm trying to encourage people to just build their own websites and go back to doing things like what they called link. Oh, I can't remember what they're called now. Kind of chains where you just have. I'm part of one. Oh, web rings. That's it. Web rings. Yeah, where you just kind of have links at the bottom of your page that kind of like link to other people. So you
like,
become part of a like a third nature web ring.
Like a
so all the artists. Yeah, that's it. So if every artist had a web on Third Nature had their own personal website, perhaps at the bottom of their website they would say part of the Third Nature web ring, and it would have links to other people's sites, part of Third Nature. So yeah, I think some of that Web 1.0 stuff is going to hopefully come back into to play with Web3.
I guess, yeah, it can only happen if people make it happen, right? I mean, it's kind of happened already with Bandcamp in terms of like the way that Spotify came along and was like a little baby and it was all cute, and then it suddenly became this monster overnight when it signed deals with the majors and started to like get in the press for all the wrong reasons. And like, but as that's happening, we've always known that there's other things happening, like there's cooperative labels have been around for years. I remember when I was buying records, there was a cooperative called Goya, who were kind of like specializing in like future beats and jazz sort of things and soul, and they were like running out of London, and like they were shipping records at the time, but like you've now got labels who are doing the majority of their business on Bandcamp. Or like you've got other places that do allow you to be directly selling to your people, but also it's not just about selling, then it's also about building that community. And it reminds me, actually, this whole web ring thing, it reminds me of when starting up blogs. The whole thing that got blogs going well is they got added to other blogs, and there was this whole
the blog roll.
the blog roll. And like there's this whole kind of like this circular sort of environment where if you got onto a specific blog roll, then you suddenly got loads of people coming through, and like, yeah, there was an excitement about that, I guess. And I think one of the things that's killing it, going back to that transactional thing, is the whole idea that you've got to pay for that now here on Facebook, or, that whole advertisement thing. Obviously it keeps things running, and it's beneficial for those who can afford it, or like those that have the reach, but it kind of
and for those that really want to do that, like I'm lucky enough to have a job where I don't have to rely on essentially hustling, because that's what we it's that precariat model of having to hustle, which is what many creative practitioners and artists have to do. And so to do that now, not only do you have to be good at your creative disciplines, or your single creative discipline, but you have to develop skills in a range of disciplines and be good at marketing and be good at social media management and stuff like that. And I mean, it's only going to benefit you kind of upskilling in all those different things, but
it's mental, isn't it?
But it can come with yes, it can come with its downsides as well. But people that do that, good on them. Fair play to them. I can't do it because I don't know whether I've.
Yeah, it's that 360 model, isn't it? There is actually, on paper it looks like it's doable, but yeah, I mean, so much of it draws away from the actual act of creating. Like, yeah, sure, you can make every single part of that 360 model something creative. If you're a creative mind, everything you do is kind of creative in it, the way you approach things, but it draws away from the fact that you're meant to be making something to put in the middle of that 360 idea. It's like working for an enterprise. It's mad because like that's the whole company is like huge amount of people all working towards one cause, and then independent artists are expected to basically be their own enterprise and like do the work of hundreds of other people as one person, like and yeah, I can.
That's it. And then that's why I set up the cooperative label, because I kind of said to myself that I'm not going to do work by myself anymore. I'm still going to make music by myself, but I'm not going to do that kind of stuff by myself. So the label was set up so that there is a network of people that can bounce off each other. So, if people wanted to have some mixing done or some feedback for a track, obviously you can kind of rely on friends, and people have peers that they can kind of do that with. But this is a bit more of a like legitimized network, being a label where we can kind of get together and we can talk about campaigns as artists, rather than having to kind of like go to your label manager, and they kind of dictate how that campaign runs, because ultimately they want to make a profit from you. It's about, right, what campaign do you want to do that's kind of healthy for you as a person, as well as an artist. And yeah, the kind of label kind of like, we kind of help each other.
I was on a stream just the other day interviewing a label and an artist. So the label were called Rose Parade, and they're recording.
Oh yeah, they're fab.
Yeah, Co-Operative as well, and then Shreddies was also on there. But yeah, one of the things that they were saying is like how when they've got the board, it enables them to release a whole mix of different music. You don't have to follow some sort of idea or like some sort of genre, because that's how you set yourself up to be. Because as a cooperative, everybody has a say and everybody has a different opinion or has a different sound that they like, and so it becomes a lot more malleable, I guess, in terms of like your release schedule, but also in terms of like the community feel. Again, going back to community, about how you can all get together and air your problems, and it might not just be about your next release, it might be about how you just feel in general, and having that group, especially in this time, and all feeling like you're on a par, rather than on the same level, all being part of the cooperative. You're all on the same level, right? Rather than you've got to go to the boss and say, boss, I've got a problem, like, and like, I guess there's a little bit more openness then around the board as well because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, one of our things is that we kind of champion other labels that do really good stuff. So yeah, Rose Parade are wicked. And then there's other kind of more traditional labels as well, where they do have those kind of more traditional structures that still do really, really good things. But that's not how I as a musician would want to work, because in those kind of cases, if you're happy to kind of be part of a label where that is the case, I assume that the musicians just want to focus on making some music. And so you have people in charge of the label who are really good at being in charge of a label, and that's how that works.
There's always going to be a place for that. It's not like
absolutely.
It's not like the whole industry is going to suddenly just turn around and go, oh, we're going to do it differently now. I mean, like,
no.
What kind of labels would you say that are, which would be labeled as almost traditional labels now? Who do you rate at the moment who's doing like good things for artists but keeping the sort of
to be totally honest, I don't really know the ins and outs of many labels at all. I know Rose Parade just because I was I kind of came across them weirdly as serendipitously while I was doing research for Third Nature, and they're a CIC, they're a community interest company, and I read they just seem to be doing some really cool stuff in Cardiff. I'd love to come hang out with them at some point. And I know Libertino in Wales are doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah, and I guess in that sense, Libertino Records are quite a traditional label, but but run by people that absolutely love what they're doing.
That's the thing. Yeah, I know of the people running Libertino, and I know how I know their kind of the ideas that they have. So it's I guess it's just about mindset, and I only hear good stories about the artists and at places like Libertino. Yeah,
I've got a comment, Richard.
cool.
Oh, sorry, it's yeah, I'm looking for a film director at the moment for a live stream project idea, but
Oh, nice.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's been really good talking to you.
Yeah, it's been lush.
Yeah, it's been lovely. I reckon we could carry on talking all night, but it's against the rules. You beat me. You absolutely smashed me at chess, and my points are probably I'm going to be pretty low now, but it's not.
I'm going to look back over that because I wasn't paying attention. I do
don't.
like to go back over my games.
Yeah, no, I do as well. I'm not going to go over for that one though, because like I don't know that we played this 24-hour game, and you know, like there, I was able to watch YouTube videos and study every move and actually give you a game. And like in that one, I was just completely rinsed. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about music, talk about you and your work, and it's been great.
Well, let's play some more chess because I'm really into it. I read this. I've got this book here because this is what kind of got me into chess. It's a book called Chess, believe it or not, by this chap called Stefan Zweig, who's a Austrian author. It's just like a short novella. He normally does longer books, but yeah, it's really, really lovely. And that kind of he kind of just talks about chess, the stories about chess, and it's a really, really, really lovely story that kind of made me fall in love with the idea of chess. And I thought, I'll give this a go because it sounds quite appealing. And then that Gambit program,
Queen's Gambit,
that's the one came on, and all my friends thought I was just playing because that came on. I didn't even see Queen's Gambit.
Every single person I've mentioned chess to recently go, oh yeah, Queen's Gambit, and I'm gonna spin it out there, and I'm gonna say Queen of Katwa, actually, not Queen's Gambit. I'm gonna say Queen of Katwa, which is a Disney film that I watched last night for inspiration.
Oh, nice!
It just made me cry, you know.
Queen of
Katwa.
Queen of Katwa.
Yeah, it was a very, it's a tearjerker. It's Disney. What do I expect? I didn't learn anything about chess, but I learned that humanity's terrible and we're all gonna like, whatever. Hey, it's been lovely chatting with you.
Yeah, really nice.
I've got a stream tomorrow night as well with one of the greatest people of all time. There's even a quote here from Oprah Winfrey herself saying, "In the beginning there was nothing. Then Don Piper roundhouse kicked nothing and told it to get a job." And it's Don Piper who's going to be on the stream tomorrow.
Nice.
I know. I'm really excited and a little bit nervous because he's an absolute legend, and he's just released an EP called Don Piper by Don Piper, based on the best written novel by Don Piper and film called Don Piper. It's written and directed by Don Piper, and it stars Don Piper as Don Piper.
Wow, that's very meta. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be hugely egotistical. No, he's a great guy actually, and it's not going to be anything like that. It's all jokes. It's going to be good, and the EP is really interesting as well. So yeah, looking forward to that. So yeah, thank you very much. This has been EMW TV playing chess and talking music with Gary Martin of Third Nature Records, head of education at Pyka, also known as Jack of the Suburbs. And you should really check out that music. And also, I was going to actually say this to you, and I might as well say it on the stream live because it's really worth checking out. Check out on Bandcamp, Check Rex, CHECK Rex. It's a Wales label as well, Wales based on Bandcamp.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But yeah, really interesting sort of found sounds and like electronic sort of music. And I listened to your music on Jack of the Suburbs, and you thought you might find it interesting. So anyway, that was recommended by Shreddies of Rose Parade Recording Cooperative as well. So, bro, thanks a lot, everybody.
Nice one. Catch you soon.